The more we lean on automation and security, the more this question keeps nagging at me. If a system is making critical calls, how do we truly understand and, well, trust its judgment? It's kind of like trusting a self-driving car when you can't see the code behind the wheel. Exciting, yeah, but maybe a little unsettling. Expert speaker, Jordan. Unsettling is definitely the right word. I mean, we're talking about handing over significant decision-making power to algorithms. And without really understanding how they work, we're essentially operating on faith. That raises some pretty serious questions, especially when things go wrong.
Exactly. So in the deep dive, we're tackling a potential path towards that trust. Energy-based models, or EBMs. Think of it as trying to peek under the hood of that self-driving security system. Our goal today is to understand how EBMs, along with tools like audit trails and explainability features, can make security automation something we can actually rely on and, more importantly, be accountable for. Expert speaker, Alex. And that accountability piece is key, right? It's not just about the tech working.
It's about us understanding why it's working, or maybe why it's not. Couldn't agree more. To help us navigate this, we've got Alex, our resident tech expert, who's going to demystify EBMs and these explainability features. Then Jordan will be diving deep into the legal and executive minefield because, let's be honest, that's where a lot of the real-world roadblocks and responsibilities lie. And as always, Riley's here to bring the listener's perspective, those crucial questions that bridge the gap between the technical jargon and our everyday concerns. So, Alex, let's pull back the curtain. What exactly are these energy-based models? Expert speaker, Alex.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this. Imagine an AI model that doesn't directly say this is good or this is bad. Instead, it assigns an energy score to different scenarios it sees in your data. The model learns what normal looks like, those are low energy states, and flags anything that looks, well, out of the ordinary with a high energy score. Think of energy here as like a measure of how unexpected or out of place a piece of data appears to the model based on what it's learned as normal. Low energy. Fits right in. High energy.
Oh, something's probably off. So it's like the model is building a picture of normal, and anything that doesn't quite fit that picture starts setting off alarms, or rather, raising its energy level.
Yeah.
Expert speaker, Alex.
Precisely, yeah. And what makes EBMs particularly interesting for security is their knack for spotting anomalies. In network traffic, for example, normal activity has certain patterns, right? An attack, that might look completely different. EBMs are pretty good at capturing that differentness by assigning it a high energy score because it deviates significantly from the low energy patterns they've learned.
Okay. So how does this energy score actually manifest? Can you give us a tangible example? Expert speaker, Alex.
Sure. A common technique, especially with a type of EBM called an autoencoder, uses something called the reconstruction error as that energy score. So an autoencoder is basically a neural network that tries to recreate the data you feed it. You train it on tons of normal data. Then when you throw something unusual at it, something anomalous, the model struggles. It struggles to reconstruct it accurately.
That difference between the original and the reconstructed data, that's the reconstruction error, and we use it as our energy score. A big difference, a high energy score, suggests the model thinks it's an anomaly because it just can't make sense of it based on its training on normal stuff. Okay, expert speaker, Alex. For example, maybe a login attempt comes from a country you've never seen activity from before for a specific user. The autoencoder, trained on typical login patterns, would likely fail to reconstruct that unusual login accurately, resulting in a high energy score. Right, so a weird login attempt gets flagged because the model essentially goes, wait, I can't put this puzzle piece back where it belongs. That makes sense technically. But Alex, we often hear about AI being a black box. We see the anomaly flag, but we don't know why. How do EBMs, or rather, how can we make them less of a black box in a security context? Expert speaker, Alex. Yeah, you've hit on the core challenge for trust, really. While the internal workings of an EBM can be complex, we can layer on other techniques to provide that crucial why. We can integrate tools like SOP, Lime, or integrated gradients. These are methods that help us understand which specific features, think of them as like individual data points, contributed the most to the model assigning that high energy score. Expert speaker, Alex. For instance, with that unusual login, these tools could highlight that the geographical location was the biggest driver of the high energy. Okay, so these tools are like shining a spotlight on the specific clues that made the model suspicious. Expert speaker, Alex. Exactly, yeah. And we can build user-friendly dashboards that visualize this. Imagine an alert for that suspicious login with a high energy score. Next to it, maybe a breakdown shows that the unusual country of origin and, I don't know, newly seen browser version were the two biggest factors pushing that score up. That gives security analysts actionable insights, the why behind the alert, That's a significant step towards building trust. Yeah, seeing those contributing factors makes the automated decision feel less like a random judgment. Now, what about keeping a record of all this? How do we ensure accountability and have a clear history of a system's actions? Expert speaker, Alex. All right, that's where audit trails become absolutely essential. We need to maintain immutable logs records that just can't be altered of every single decision the model makes. This includes the raw data that went in, the calculated energy score, the specific threshold that triggered the anomaly flag, and the final action taken. Think of audit trails not just as logs, but as like the bedrock of accountability in a world increasingly governed by autonomous systems. They transform abstract AI decisions into traceable actions, bridging the gap between code and consequence. Immutable logs meaning they're basically tamper-proof. Expert speaker, Alex.
Precisely, yeah.
Yeah.
This creates a transparent history that security teams can review to understand the system's performance, investigate incidents thoroughly, and importantly, demonstrate compliance with various regulations. If there's ever a question about why a particular user was blocked, you can go back to the audit trail and see the exact data the model processed and its reasoning at that specific moment. This sounds like it would address a lot of the concerns that I'm sure are top of mind for you, Jordan, from a legal and executive perspective.
When you hear about these automated security decisions powered by EBMs, what are the immediate legal and accountability issues that jump out at you? Expert speaker, Jordan. Well, the concept of fully autonomous actions, especially when we're talking about security with potentially significant consequences, immediately raises red flags. I mean, if the system makes an error, blocks a legitimate customer, misses a critical intrusion, the question of legal liability becomes incredibly complex. Who is responsible? Is it the organization that deployed the system, the developers who created the algorithm? These aren't straightforward legal questions, and the opaqueness of black box AI just exacerbates the uncertainty. It's like if a human security analyst makes a mistake, there's a process for review for understanding where things went wrong. But with a fully autonomous AI, it feels like we're entering kind of uncharted legal territory.
Expert speaker, Jordan.
We're doing. And then we have to consider the regulatory landscape. Regulations like GDPR, HIPAA, PCI DSS, they often mandate auditable logic. They require organizations to be able to explain how decisions impacting individuals or sensitive data are being made. Traditional black box EBMs, without the explainability features Alex described and, robust audit trails, could very well fall short of these legal requirements.
Right.
Expert speaker, Jordan. Without a clear why and a traceable what, we're looking at potential compliance violations and the legal ramifications that come with them. And from a legal standpoint, that immutability Alex mentioned with audit trails is absolutely key. It provides a defensible record that can't really be questioned later. So without that transparency and traceability, we're not just potentially less secure, we're also potentially in legal jeopardy. What about all the data these systems generate, the logs, the decision records? What are the implications for data retention policies, especially with regulations like GDPR? Expert speaker, Jordan. Oh, data retention is a critical area under GDPR. We need to retain data for legitimate purposes, obviously, like security incident investigation and demonstrating compliance. However, GDPR also enforces the principle of data minimization, basically. We shouldn't keep personal data for longer than absolutely necessary. This creates a tension, right? Expert speaker, Jordan. We need enough log data to be effective in our security ops and to meet legal requirements. But we also need to be mindful of not hoarding personal data unnecessarily, which could lead to GDPR violations. We need really clear policies outlining what data we retain, for how long, and why. It sounds like we need to walk a very fine line between effective security logging and responsible data management. Expert speaker, Jordan. Precisely. And thinking about those fully autonomous actions and the potential for legal issues, the concept of human in the loop becomes particularly relevant, especially for high-stakes decisions. For critical asset classes or actions that could have significant consequences, having a human review and approve the automated decision provides a crucial layer of oversight and accountability. It's a way to mitigate risk, at least until we have a much higher degree of confidence in the AI's reliability and can fully explain its reasoning. Yeah, that makes sense. Expert speaker, Jordan. And it's absolutely crucial that every single model decision, the associated energy score, and any automated playbook that's invoked is meticulously logged with precise timestamps. That's critical for legal defensibility and auditability down the line. That makes perfect sense, like a human safety net for the really important stuff. Jordan, you also touched on cross-border data exposure earlier. How does that complicate things further with EBMs and their associated data? Expert speaker, Jordan. In today's interconnected world, this is a really significant concern. If the data used to train the EBM or the logs of its decisions cross legal jurisdictions, it can create a complex web of compliance requirements. GDPR, for instance, has very strict rules about transferring personal data outside of the European Economic Area. Organizations need to be very, very aware of where their data is being processed and stored. This might necessitate implementing region-specific processing pipelines and ensuring data residency to comply with local data protection laws. A global company might indeed need different configurations and storage solutions for their EBM infrastructure depending on where they operate. It's not trivial. So it's not just about the technology itself, but also about understanding the geographical and legal landscape in which it operates. Wow. This is all incredibly insightful, but it also brings up a very human element for me. Riley, you've been listening intently. What's the question that's been simmering in your mind, the one that our listeners might be thinking about the most right now?
Well, yeah, hearing you guys talk about automated decisions and flagging anomalies, the first thing that popped into my head is, like, could this system accidentally get someone fired? I mean, if it flags an employee's activity as anomalous, maybe wrongly, and that triggers some automated HR process, that could have really serious real-world consequences for that person, right?
That's a really powerful and relatable question, Riley. Yeah. Alex, from a technical perspective, how could the explainability features and audit trails you described help in understanding and potentially preventing such a scenario? Expert speaker, Alex. Well, that's precisely why those features are so important in building trust. If an employee's behavior is flagged as anomalous and it, say, initiates an automated HR action, the audit trail would provide a detailed record of why the system made that determination, what specific actions or data points led to the high energy score. And the explainability tools could pinpoint which particular behaviors were the biggest contributors to that score. This provides crucial context for human review. Okay, expert speaker, Alex. Before any irreversible action like termination is taken, an HR representative or a security analyst could examine the evidence, understand the model's reasoning, and assess whether the flag is a legitimate security concern or maybe just a false positive. So it provides the data for a necessary human check before an automated system potentially impacts someone's livelihood. Jordan, from a legal standpoint, if an incorrect automated action does lead to job loss, what are the potential legal ramifications for the company, and how vital is that human oversight you mentioned earlier? Expert speaker, Jordan. Oh, the legal repercussions in such a scenario could be significant, really significant. Depending on the jurisdiction and the specifics of the case, the organization could face claims of wrongful termination, maybe discrimination, and certainly reputational damage. Regulatory bodies might also investigate if the automated decision-making process lacks transparency, fairness, or due process. Human oversight is absolutely critical in these high-stakes situations. Having a human in the loop, especially before any action with serious human impact is taken, provides a vital safeguard.
Right.
Expert speaker, Jordan. It ensures that there's a responsible individual who can validate the automated system's output, consider the context, and prevent potentially unfair or incorrect outcomes. The lack of such oversight could expose the organization to, well, significant legal and financial risks. It really underscores the delicate balance we need to strike, doesn't it? The allure of automation for efficiency versus the fundamental need for human judgment, especially when decisions can have such profound consequences on individuals' lives. Expert speaker, Jordan. Absolutely. And it highlights the crucial point that while these AI-powered security systems offer incredible potential, their deployment must be approached with a deep understanding of the legal, ethical, and human implications. We can't simply automate and forget. We need to build in mechanisms for transparency, accountability, and human intervention where it's necessary. Jordan, you mentioned GDPR's emphasis on the right to an explanation earlier. Can you elaborate a bit more on the specific challenges that poses for EBMs in security? Expert speaker, Jordan.
Sure. So Article 22 of GDPR grants individuals the right not to be subject to decisions based solely on automated processing, including profiling, that produce legal effects concerning them or similarly significantly affect them. Now, while there are exceptions, the core principle is the right to human intervention and to receive a meaningful explanation of automated decisions that impact them.
This presents a direct challenge for EBMs if they operate as true black boxes, without the ability to explain why a particular decision was made. Expert speaker. Jordan. If a security system flags an individual's activity as suspicious based on an EBM, and that leads to consequences like account suspension or access denial, the individual has a right under GDPR to understand the reasoning behind that decision. Simply stating, the AI flagged it is unlikely to be sufficient. We need to be able to provide more detail about the factors that led to that classification. So implementing EBMs without those explainability mechanisms could put organizations in direct conflict with GDPR regulations. Expert speaker, Jordan. Precisely. Yeah, we need to be able to articulate the logic involved, or at least provide enough information about the decision-making process for the individual to understand the basis of the decision and, importantly, potentially contest it. What about the data used to train and operate these EBMs? GDPR has pretty strict rules around data collection, purpose limitation, and providing notice, doesn't it? Expert speaker.
Right, absolutely.
GDPR's principle of purpose limitation dictates that personal data should only be collected for specified, explicit, and legitimate purposes, and not further processed in a way that's incompatible with those original purposes. So when training EBMs for security purposes, we need to be crystal clear about this objective and ensure that the data collected for threat detection isn't repurposed for other forms of profiling that individuals haven't consented to. Right. Expert speaker, Jordan. Furthermore, GDPR emphasizes transparency. We need to provide clear and concise information to individuals about how their personal data is being processed, including if automated decision-making is involved. In some cases, we might even need to provide individuals with the ability to object to such processing. And as we've discussed, robust audit trails are essential for demonstrating compliance with these principles. They allow us to trace how decisions were made and ensure accountability. Finally, Jordan, let's just quickly revisit data retention under GDPR in the context of EBMs and security logging. What are the key considerations there? Expert speaker, Jordan? Well, GDPR mandates that personal data should only be kept for as long as necessary for the purposes for which it was collected. This has significant implications for the logs generated by EBMs and other security systems. While we definitely need to retain logs for a sufficient period to investigate security incidents and maintain a strong security posture, we simply can't keep personal data indefinitely. We need to establish clear data retention policies that specify how long different types of security logs are kept and ensure that we have mechanisms in place to securely delete or anonymize data once it's no longer needed. Techniques like pseudonymization or anonymization can be really valuable for retaining security insights without holding on to directly identifiable personal data beyond the necessary time frame. It requires a careful balancing act and a well-defined data lifecycle management process. This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the complexities of energy-based models in security automation. It's clear that while they offer powerful capabilities, building trust isn't just about the technology itself. It's fundamentally about transparency, accountability, and navigating the legal and ethical landscape. Expert speaker.
Very nice.
Exactly. Automation security can only be truly trusted when it's governed transparently. We need to be able to understand how these systems are making decisions, ensure they comply with legal frameworks like GDPR, and address the very real concerns about the human impact of these technologies. And it really comes down to finding the right balance, doesn't it? Leveraging the efficiency of automation while maintaining crucial human oversight, especially for those high-stakes decisions that can impact individuals directly. Expert speaker, Alex, AAC. Absolutely. EBMs offer a lot of promise for enhancing security, but they need to be implemented with a strong focus on explainability and robust auditability to build that necessary trust. It's not optional, really. So as security systems become increasingly sophisticated and autonomous, the ability to understand why they make certain decisions will be just as critical as the decisions themselves. What questions does this raise for you about the future of your organization's security posture and your approach to automation? Expert speaker, Jordan. It's definitely a question that demands careful consideration. The future of AI and security is undoubtedly exciting, but it requires us to prioritize responsible and ethical deployment with transparency and accountability right at its core. Absolutely. We encourage you to continue exploring this vital topic and consider how these concepts apply to your own context. And join us next time for another deep dive into the ever-evolving world of technology.